So we're going to jump into working with type. And what I had done was I just kind of put my ideas out on the page to begin to kind of see how the information is going to look. So I don't know how it's going to lay out on the page here, but I do have some ideas of how I want to display the information using different qualities of space, relationship, and such. And what I've done here is I type all my stuff out onto the page, get it out into the page here. And what I've got here is everything to do with grocery stores, supermarkets there. And I've got, the average cost of the family of 3, 4, 5, 6, right there, that's supposed to be 6. Totally disregard the spelling. I can do a whole bunch of things. Typing is not one of them. And I've got the different values that people spend a month on their grocery bill, the amount of electricity that an average grocery store uses, the cost of butter over the last 30, 40 years, the top 3 factors in shopping, barcodes here, the top 10 items purchased, the number of people who shop drunk, how much soda is in a can and how much you do, how many apples are in a gallon of cider, how many kids get hurt from a shopping cart, how apples ripen, and everything to do with bacon here. So a lot of interesting fun facts in a grocery store, and these are what I'm going to use to put together the final infographic at the end of today's class. Now I have to determine, I've got my color palette here. I simply copied that over from the other file that I had. And I had been working with and kind of creating just a few basic icons here because it's always tricky whether I want to go with 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, and I've got great ideas to do stuff, but some of the stuff is 3-dimensional. It's like, okay, do I do everything 3-dimensional? I don't know. So I'm just going to wing it as I do everything else. So what I decided to do was I'm starting to go through and pick some fonts here that are going to look good for some basic items. There's no place that I start. I simply start wherever. And one of the things that I'm probably going to use, because it's very iconic, is the dollar sign. We know cost, money, things like that. So what I've done here is I simply create a dollar sign, take my type tool, create a dollar sign, and I just ran through several different typefaces to see what dollar sign may work really good. And I've got a couple ones here. This is League Gothic. This is Interstate Regular. I love Interstate. News Gothic is also a good one. Proxima Nova, who knows what that is. 2 cent, whatever. It's missing a whole bunch of words. Whatever it is. 2 cent Montana, I don't know. Now, you'll notice that I'm going with sans serifs here. You probably don't notice on the dollar signs, but sans serifs generally are going to lend a very nice, square, blocky, rigid overall feel to what's going on. It isn't uncommon to use a serif face. It's not something that I'm going to use for a lot of the display type. And the rule for type is, serif for stuff that you're going to read, sans serif for web. Well, infographics, majority of them use sans serif fonts because of the cleanliness. So instead of just going in and trying to pick a font and just kind of randomly choose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some words and I'm going to begin to start applying fonts to these words. And just like I've done here with the dollar signs here, I'm looking for particular characteristics. What exactly am I looking for? Well, I can't articulate that. It's one of those things. Once I see it, I'll know. But I'm looking at this, and all of these have certain qualities here. What I'm looking for in a particular typeface here is I'm looking for something that is going to have different weights to it. So I can create different intensities of it here. That's one factor that I can use. Don't necessarily have to. I can actually have all the same weight, and the color, the tint and the shade can vary, which will then go ahead and vary the voice and the intensity of what's going on. How many fonts do I choose? Well, probably not many, because the visual noise that goes on with multiple fonts can be very distracting. This is supposed to be a visual element along with the type and along with the icons that's all going to come together. And as I have said before, the type is the actors in this, and so I need to cast the correct actor so that I'm not going to cast a 70-year-old person in a role of a child. Doesn't make sense. So first of all, I'm going to avoid all of the cutesy, fun, little artsy fonts. Done. Not going to do it. I'm going to go for the more blocky serif stuff, and I'm looking for certain weights of these that I can then pull the thickness of the verticals and the horizontals and the curves so that I can use that same kind of thickness for the weight of my lines and the distance between objects. It all comes together. It's something that we pay attention to. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to try certain words here or certain phrases, and I'm going to see how it's going to work with certain typefaces. And it may take a while. And as I do, what I do is I'm going to build, just like I do with all my colors, I'm going to build out a kind of quick little chart here, or a quick little section of all the things that I can create using these typefaces. And I'm going to try just this simple little phrase right here. Little did you know, 36 apples equals 1 gallon of cider. Okay, so how do I represent this visually with a typeface, but also something that's going to be interesting? I'm going to put an infographic here as well, that's for sure. And I want to pick a typeface that's going to work really well. So I'm going to select the entire typeface, and I'm going to go to my font drop-down menu, and I'm not going to search through it by looking and seeing it's like, oh, that one's going to look good. No way. I start at the top, and I'm going to start with something like this. And it's like, okay, you know, that's one of those artsy fonts. Has a place, but not in my infographic here. This is a little bit too cheeky and fun. So I'm going to put my cursor right up here in the font family window, and I'm just going to go up and down through my font menu. And I'm just going to see what kind of typeface is going to work really good for what I'm doing. And this is a typeface that could work right here. It's like, okay, that's alternate Gothic. I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to see how this is going to work in, say, okay, that only comes in regular, alternate Gothic there. So it only comes in regular. I don't have any other size other than regular. So, you know, that one's not going to work. A little bit too casual serif right there. So I don't think I'm going to use that. Avenir, I always like. One of the things I don't like about Avenir is its roundedness. I like a little bit more vertical and condensed. Just a personal preference. But one of the great things with Avenir that may work for me is that it has multiple different styles of typefaces here. So I've got light, I've got medium, I've got heavy. And with that, I can really try to create some visual effects here with the different weights of the type. And I'm going to put it on the page anyway, because I just want to see what it's going to look like. I can pick and choose, but I'm not going to do it just one at a time. I'm going to put these all on the page, and I'm going to pick and choose when I see everything up against each other. I'm going to do one more copy of this here because I think it's got a different typeface in here. So there's heavy, there's medium right there. And this has some great transitional qualities here, so you can do some things that are going to be big and bold, things that are going to be a little bit lighter as well. So I'm going to kind of nest those together, separate that out, and I'm going to copy something else here. Select my copy. Again, go back in the menu here and start working my way down. Avenir condensed. That may work. The condensed is looking okay. I don't mind that, but you know, in this particular font here, one of the things I do want to see is how everything is going to look in all caps. I don't really like the lowercase a's here. It seems like a little bit too much of a thick and thin, and it's not consistent all the way around. So I'm going to see how this looks in all caps, and maybe I end up using all caps for this. I'm not sure. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one. Don't know if I'm really loving that. And you know, with this one, I'm just going to do all caps in this too. And that may work as well. Literally just trying it all out. And I'm going to go through lots of these here. And so now that I have both caps and lowercase, I'm going to grab those. I'll zoom back in on that. Keep working down the list. I'm going to avoid all the serifs, definitely not that one. Don't really want the serifs, don't want the scripts there. That may be good for a headline there, I don't know, because I'm not just going to use the same thing throughout. I may, I doubt it. And I generally don't use italic. That one's okay, not great. As I go, nope, too funky. Serifs, oh. Century Gothic, very much like Avenir. Let me go ahead and try Century Gothic here on this as well. If I can type Century Gothic, because this has, well, this has Gothic and it has Gothic bold as well. So that's Gothic bold. That could work as well, different typefaces there. very much like Avenir, a little bit, yeah, still on the fence about that. But I'm not done anyway. So I'm going to go through, keep going. Definitely not. Chalk Duster, no. Nope. Got a lot of fonts here. So a couple of my favorites that I always love. Interstate is one, and I love Duke. Duke is another good one that I really find works well for this stuff, of which we do have Interstate here. We just don't have the entire face of Interstate. Euro Style, you know, that could be interesting, but that's more of a techie kind of thing, so I don't know that Euro Style is going to work. Right there. Franklin Gothic, you know, I have done Futura, but here's the thing. Okay, so Franklin Gothic condensed here. This could work. Franklin Gothic condensed here because, or compressed, because we've got book, we've got demi, we've got bold. Okay, that may work really good. I kind of like that. Yeah, that could definitely work. So I'm just going to keep working down the list here till I find what I'm going to like. Okay, so I'm at Franklin Gothic. I'm going to go down here. Frutiger, no, not really. Futura can work. Still, it's got. I like Futura. I think it works really well, especially Futura condensed. I think that can work, but I've used that quite often. So, oh look, a whole thing of infographics already. What am I using fonts? You know, or using infographics, I can just use fonts. Right there, Geosans Light. If it has the word light in it, will it have a, so Geosans Light, regular, medium italic, Geosans. So, yeah, it's just got medium, light, and italic. I kind of like that, but the font seems just a little bit light to me. I like that font, but because it doesn't have a bold or a medium in there, that may preclude me from using that. Okay, well, that's not too bad. This one, Gotham. Yep, that's actually a good one too because, ooh, here we go. Gotham has this, and I had forgotten about this, using Gotham here. So there's thin, there's book, and we also have, let me choose Gotham right here. We have bold, we've got ultra, we've got black. Ooh, you know, this could be awesome. This could be the one. Medium, bold, black, wow. Lots of great typefaces here from thin to thick. So we could do a couple different things. We could play with the weight of the typefaces, or we can keep the weight the same, and we can change our volume of the type by tinting and shading right there. I think we're onto something really good here with Gotham. One thing I like about this is it's not as rounded as Avenir is right here. Avenir tends to be fairly rounded, or Century Gothic there, this is Avenir. Tends to be a little bit more rounded. This seems just a little bit less rounded in there. So it's all looking pretty good. I'm going to try one more here because I know we've got Interstate in there as well. And I'm going to grab this, and now I'll be able to see really well just how this is all going to work. Okay. Last one here. I think this should be pretty good. Sometimes this takes a really long process here. This could take me an hour or two searching for fonts online, finding something, and then I may like a font, but when I start creating the texture of the story with certain things, sorry, I won't use Helvetica. Oh, there's some nice infographics right there. Wow. So what's the name of that font? Don't know, but there's some infographics if you want to do it right there. Herculaneum, so between there it is. Impact, no, definitely not. Interstate, and I do like Interstate. I've used that before. Don't have the full version of this, so we only have the uppercase, lowercase here. That could work as well. Okay, I lied. I'm going to do one more here because we've got the space for it. So I'm going to keep working down the list here. And it doesn't matter if you have 40 different ideas. Put them all on there. You can very easily see what's going to work. League Gothic. Did we use that before? Yeah. So League Gothic, nah, we only have that in regular, so that's not going to work. A little bit too. We do have Letter Gothic, and we have medium. Yeah, that's not going to work either. I don't want to keep messing with the word spacing as well. Going through, let's kind of interesting, but a little bit too much of a serif right there. And also in mind, I'm keeping for a headline too, you know. So here's one thing that's kind of wacky. This little handwriting, mathlete, bulky or whatever, I'm just going to save that. I'm not going to use that for my infographic here, but I'm just, you know, that may work for a headline. I don't know. You know, if something goes ahead and, you know, says something to you, certainly listen to it. And if it says weird stuff to you, just tell it to shut up. You know? I kind of like that too, but that looks more like a money font. Definitely not. No. Microsoft, why? Well, just the name of it, I can't use it, sorry. MT Extra. That's a little bit, that's Myriad right there. Myriad Pro for the web. News Gothic. News Gothic isn't bad because we do have, well, we've got bold. That could work. I'm just gonna keep making my artboard bigger and bigger and bigger. So I've got News Gothic here. And so I'm gonna do this as News Gothic. Right there. This is going to be News Gothic Bold. And I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen with everything right here. These I'm just going to make a little bit bigger so I can kind of see the visual weight of what's going on right there. And overall, I see this and it's like, okay, that one, no, not going to work. I don't think that's going to do it for me. I do still like the Avenir. I think it's got some good typefaces here. This one is a little bit too plain. This I kind of like because of the dramatic roundedness of them. This, the Franklin Gothic, I think it's just a little, maybe a little bit too compressed. I really like the really impactfulness of the lights and the heavies here as well. Interstate I think is fine. I wish we had more of the faces in here. It's not bad. News Gothic is working too as well. So I think I've got some really good quality of type right here. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to narrow it down to a couple. And then once I narrow it down, I'm then going to take my copy and I'm going to apply it to other little sections of the story to see how those are going to work out. So I've got some numbers, letters, symbols in here that I've picked out. And here it is, and you know, I don't know, I'm just kind of gravitating toward Gotham right here. So I'm going to grab something else here, and we're going to do something all about bacon. So 59% of bacon is consumed on the weekend, on the weekdays, 41% on the weekends. Okay, let's see how this kind of spells out into a story, and I'm now going to grab my eyedropper tool, and I'm just going to sample Gotham right there. Okay. You know what? I think I like this. Got some nice roundiness, got some nice bulk to it. If I were to go in here and grab my eyedropper tool, wherever it may be, sample this, I can then go in and I can increase the numbers. I like the size of the numbers. I like the percentage of here. And if I were to go through here and actually make this all caps right here by clicking on my character, I could do that and make this really big, 59% consumed on weekdays. Okay, that's looking really good. I like that a lot. And because I've got the really thicks and thins, it's really dramatic here. And this is where I'm going to spend some time with kerning as well, just to get the right visual effect. And sometimes I'll go through and I'll just do an entire block of type so that I line everything up. Other times I may do flush left and ragged right, or flush right, ragged left, just to see. But you know what? I kind of like this. I think this looks good in the typeface right here. I'm going to try something else here, you know, 41% on weekends. I'm just going to increase the size of this. And maybe go in and I'm going to do Gotham, say bold, and make this really big. And what I'm doing is I'm having the actors read the script, but in different ways. Okay? So I've kind of picked the person who I want to do the story, and I'm just going through and having them read the script. And just seeing how this is going to work when I do the visual impact of it. Okay? I like this. This seems to have a really good feel to it. This just doesn't seem to have it right there at all. And now I'm starting to do this. This is not, this is not science here. What I'm doing is I'm just starting to build this and see the voice. I kind of have a picture in my mind, because when you do enough of this stuff, you kind of feel like what it is you got. But clearly, when you see this, this has a lot more impact. This I don't think has enough difference between the weights. And maybe this becomes ultra and this becomes, extra light. No, gosh, that's as thin as it gets. And for some reason, that impact doesn't really have the same voice as this does. This just seems to be a whole lot better here. I'm going to go in here and take my eyedropper tool and sample that. And then back to my type tool and sample the on weekends and grab that as well. And part of it could be the all caps. Well, guess what, folks? I think we've just dialed in the font sooner than I thought it was going to take. But now you can see how the visual story is going to start to come into effect right here. So this is good. I've got everything spelled out here. I'm going to keep this here because as I go through, there may be a couple things that I don't like and I may just experiment with another font. Other times, you lock it right in and you're good to go. But always do the experimentation. I don't care if you go through 300 fonts. Do it. Run through the whole thing. You've got to see what it's going to look like, and then once you pick it out, start applying it to other things to see the qualities and the attributes here. One thing I didn't check out here is if this $sign actually is nice here. So it's got that. Let me check out the $sign, and it is. Oh, look at that. Was that the same $sign that I used here? So is that News Gothic? No, that's Gotham. So actually, that's a really nice $sign, and I'm going to park that over here too, because every time I get something, I'm not going to throw it away. I want the visual reference. I want that continual reference going back and forth, because when I look over here, it's like, I'm looking for a particular flavor. Space, size, visual weight, and something's going to talk to me. There's always voices in my head. It's the ones that I really want to listen to. So I keep everything there. So now that I've got my information here, I'm going to start playing a little bit with the quality of the type with color. Because I think I've already established kind of how I like this to be. And by the way, my infographic may use some of this where I just go in and use the blocky type, but we're going to use graphics, we're going to use staggered type, we're going to do charts and everything else. This is just establishing a basic look and feel, okay? Lots of actors, lots of characters, lots of different plot twists in here, have to incorporate it all. And how I start to do this is working on it all. So I'm going to copy this down here, and I'm going to see how the visual impact is going to change. I'm already getting a very nice grid structure here, which I'm really liking. Because this is a supermarket or a grocery store, I'm getting ideas, folks, getting ideas. So with this, I'm going to grab all of my colors here, and I'm going to put them over here. I'm actually going to rotate them so I can keep them kind of down here on something handy. There we go. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to select my type, eyedropper tool, and I'm going to see what blue looks like. Okay, so, that's certainly not unpleasant. I'm going to go this, I'm going to grab my darker blue. The reason why I'm going to do darker blue here, because it's a lighter face. It doesn't look any different colored blue here, so what happens if I go in and I take my lighter blue here, and then take my darker blue, come on, go in and take my darker blue here, eyedropper, darker blue, right there. Yeah, it doesn't really give that kind of impact that I was looking for, so I may actually go in and change this font to, say, light. I still don't really see the difference in the color there. There's book, not working there, right there. So this may have to become an even darker blue, and that darker blue may become almost black, so like that. Okay, I think I'm just going to still need to work on that there because it's really hard to tell that that's a color right there on that. So that may become even darker. Let me try this. I'm going to try this in kind of my orange as well. So this will become the lighter orange. Go back to my type tool. This will become the, oh, you know, that looks kind of good with the color and then black right there. So let me try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this with the yellow here, the darker yellow, kind of impactful. Oh, that can work with even just keeping this as a black instead, right there because of the thinness of the type. Okay, let me try this with a few other colors here. I like what's going on there. I think we need to go and throw a green in here as well. The blue is working, it was nice and soft. But then again, what is it that I'm trying to say with the numbers? So right now what I'm doing is I'm focusing on bacon, and this is the percentage of bacon consumed on weekdays. So I don't know that green would work. Kind of the yellow for the eggs, kind of the pink for the bacon. Yeah, you know, there's other ways that we can support this. So while I think this looks good, I think these colors go really well together. So I'm probably just gonna get rid of that. So now I'm seeing that and it's like, yeah, the impact of the black and white there is just far too contrasty. But boy, you start putting some colors in here and I'm going to start choosing the lighter or darker things, because this I actually chose the darker yellow here, and this one I actually went in and chose the lighter red, and they seem to work really good together. Just simply because the yellow is the lightest on my palette. I have. So I'm starting to like what I see here. It's really starting to come together very well. And it's interesting, the research that I did this morning online, somebody had done this whole thing about bacon, which of course I follow all the time, and it had a lot of great information, but the infographic was awful because it was a combination of gradients and shadows and literally just found objects that were then colored, and you had two-dimensional, three-dimensional illustration, you know, graphic representation, everything else. And it's like, okay, an icon is totally simple, a graphic representation kind of looks like it, an illustration can be sketchy, painting, everything else, and it's like, nope, keep everything with that same plot. Okay? You can have parallel plots here, but you can't have different narrations, different voice, different time frames, everything else. I don't know about you, but you know, there's just something that's getting me all giddy here from the whole grid structure here. I just like all these lined up, these things here, creating nice little boxes, these little things right here, and it's just getting me all warm and fuzzy. Yeah, but as long as it stays within the box. Do you have a question there, Jim?
You know, I was taking a peek there, Jason, and yeah, is this a good time?
Yes, it's great.
So, Miss Melissa is having a tough time scrolling through the fonts using the arrow key. Would you mind just showing that again, because it was a great trick?
Sure. Select your font with your type tool so that it's highlighted, and then you're simply going to place your cursor up inside your font menu, right there. Don't even have to have it selected. Just put your cursor so it's flashing right there. See that? It's flashing right there. And then up and down arrow, right on through, okay? Now, one of the things that may happen, every once in a while, you'll get to a font and that's where your cursor stops. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it, you know, hangs up on a dangling participle or, you know, some little serif. But then you have to physically go into the menu and then choose the next one there in order to get to there, and then you put your cursor back up in there and up and down. By the way, this is something that Illustrator never had and Photoshop had for years. Of course, what's the last thing you should be doing? Type in Photoshop, okay? And then InDesign got it a few generations ago, and finally last generation, Illustrator's like, oh my gosh, look, you know, I got shoes too. And it's like, wow, you know, it's like, okay, really? But yeah, just select your typeface or type with your type tool, cursor up in there, don't even have to have it selected, up and down arrow, walks your way through. It may hit a little hiccup every once in a while, then just select the next one from the menu and continue on with your cursor inside that window.
Great. And Sherry would like to know, can you recommend any places on the web, good places to find fonts?
You know, there's so many great places there, and I have to tell you folks, I don't go and purchase fonts. So, unless of course we have to do them for a client, and then that's what we use them for. There's so many great fonts. I've always loved What the Font. I've always really enjoyed that because not only can you get fonts there, but you can also scan stuff in, send it to What the Font, and it will go through based on what letters and characteristics of letters. It will hopefully find the font that you have. Now, here's one thing that's quite interesting because we have Adobe Typekit, and I'm sure people who have the Creative Cloud have gone through and they've noticed when they open up something and it doesn't have the right font in there, it'll say, hey, you don't have the right font. Do you want to open Adobe Typekit? Let me see here if I can do this in here. So Adobe Typekit comes up, awesome. And it says, hey, you know, Duke isn't on your computer, do you want to use this? Well, Adobe Typekit is Adobe's way now of having a whole bunch of free fonts that come with the Creative Cloud because they know fonts are one of those really important things that you like to use. And this automatically comes with your Creative Cloud subscription. And you can go in and you can find your fonts through Creative Cloud. You can launch the Creative Cloud and you can actually do research and find fonts and load them into your machine from the from the cloud-based Typekit app. However, two huge things. Huge. One, you cannot copy the fonts. Okay? So if you use the fonts in any Adobe application and you want to send it to somebody else who does not have the Creative Cloud, those fonts will appear in your document, but they can't ever actually use them because it's proprietary and they will not allow you to copy the fonts. So basically, if you have any of the Creative Cloud applications, you will be able to open up anything that somebody uses in Typekit on your machine because your Typekit will activate the fonts as well. That's basically making sure everybody upgrades to the Creative Cloud. The second problem is, and this I find to be a huge problem, it will not embed the fonts in a PDF. So if you design something that requires a font from Typekit and you make it into a PDF, it will always substitute the font. I don't find that acceptable because Adobe products, Adobe PDFs, they go out, they're part of the Adobe product, this is all part of the thing, and you have fonts that unless you have the Creative Cloud, your PDF doesn't read correctly. I think that's a huge oversight and that's a real annoyance because people who are doing this, you may be printing a job someplace overseas that doesn't have the fonts or the most current versions. So here's how you get around that. If you have a font that you're using for the Adobe Typekit and you know you're going to export this to a PDF or save it as a PDF, and you know you want to make it universally accepted, outline the font in your document. Okay? So when you outline it, you'll still get the same representation there. Basically, Adobe's thing is, we don't want you to steal the fonts. So you can't edit the fonts. If you create outlines there, it's no longer a font, it's just a shape and a fill, so that then you have the appearance of it. You can't edit it, you can't take it, but at least it's going to work. So huge drawback in that sense, but it's nice to have this huge family of typefaces all readily available right here in Typekit. And if I do a search for Typekit right here, here it is, but we don't actually have Typekit installed on this computer because, yeah. So typekit.com/fonts, launch the browser, come up, and you can get a quick overview of the library of fonts here. Again, you can sign in using your Creative Cloud font right there, or your login. And then these are all the fonts that I can go ahead, and there's 960 fonts. So if you want to go through and do this, you certainly can. You can search all the classification there saying, hey, I want to look for sans serif. And these are all the sans serifs that I can then go and see. There's 323 of them. I can click on any one of these. Oh, Refrigerator Deluxe, that could be a cool font. You know, so there's lots of great stuff. Download them, plug them into your machine, use them, see how it all works. Very much like Cooler, you have access to this, and all it is a login away for your access to all this stuff. Another thing that I like about this too is that when I find a particular font that I may like in here as I'm going through, it's going to tell me a lot about the font where I don't have to dig for this right here. So I'm looking right here and I may want to know something about Nimbus right here. And if I click on Nimbus, it's going to load it in here. It'll show me all the different weights of the fonts. I can see what it's like in here. I can see how it looks there, and I can actually go in and I can type some percentages right here and see how this font is going to look before I actually go and I download it. So there it is, and I can choose all the different fonts right here. So there's bold, there's black, and there's light, and yeah, this isn't a bad font. But I can do this before I even bother to go in and install it on my machine. Nice to have, but keep in mind the limitations of having that font on your machine and actually using it in your Adobe applications.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was like the longest answer ever, wasn't it? Can I use fonts? Sure, let me show you what a font is. Let's design one.